You never rest. Every word you speak, every action you take, feels like it must be perfect. And yet, the closer you try to get to perfection, the farther it seems. It's as if there is an invisible line you can never cross, a line that says, you are not enough. You weren't born with this weight. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love, acceptance, and safety were conditional. That to be cared for, you had to prove yourself over and over, in every small and large way. It might have started as a whisper, a parent's sigh when you made a mistake, a teacher's praise that felt like the only way to belong, a subtle comparison that lingered long after the words were gone. Over time, you internalized it. You began to measure yourself not by who you were, but by what you did, what you achieved, how flawless you appeared. Freud would call this the superego, a voice that judges, that criticizes, that never stops. Jung would speak of the shadow, the hidden part of yourself carrying everything you fear or reject. And modern psychology would point to the way you learn to cope, controlling your world, trying to earn security, trying to earn love. Perfectionism becomes a quiet prison. To the world, you appear disciplined, admirable, even unstoppable. But inside, there is tension, constant pressure that never eases. That inner voice whispers relentlessly, it's never enough. You could do better. You should do more. And the more you strive to protect yourself, to earn safety through flawlessness, the heavier the weight becomes. Every success is temporary, every failure magnified, and still you press on, hoping that if you try just a little harder, you will finally feel at peace. You might not realize it, but perfectionism is not about wanting to be flawless. It's about wanting to feel safe. Every time you try to control outcomes, every time you double-check, revise, or overthink, it's your mind's way of saying, if I can't control this, maybe I won't get hurt. Psychologists call this over-controlled coping, and it often originates from experiences where affection or approval felt conditional. You learned, perhaps without even noticing, that mistakes brought judgment or withdrawal, and control brought security. Freud would say your superego has become a relentless guide, always measuring, always judging. Jung would remind you that your shadow grows when you chase flawlessness, holding all the parts of yourself you fear or reject. Attachment theory explains how you may have developed patterns that tie your sense of worth to your achievements or your ability to manage relationships perfectly. Every act of control, every pursuit of perfection, becomes a strategy to navigate a world that once felt unpredictable. And yet, in your daily life, this strategy can feel like a trap. You hesitate to start things, afraid they won't be perfect. You stop yourself from finishing projects, convinced they could still be better. You analyze your words and actions endlessly, worrying about what others will think. Even when you succeed, relief is fleeting because the inner voice immediately moves the goalpost. Well, that was good, but not enough. The closer you get to perfection, the more impossible it feels, and still, you cannot stop. It's exhausting, isn't it? And perhaps what's hardest is that you can't see it clearly from the outside. To others, you appear disciplined, capable, admirable. But inside, you're always bracing, always calculating, always striving. The very armor you built to protect yourself, to earn safety, to earn love, confines you, keeping you tense, vigilant, and never fully at ease. You may not realize it, but perfectionism is really a refusal to accept the natural messiness of being human. It asks you to rise above flaws that make you vulnerable, to perform even when your heart is heavy. And yet, the very thing you are running from, uncertainty, imperfection, weakness, is what makes life rich, alive, and real. The philosopher in you might recognize a paradox. In trying to control everything, you lose the freedom to experience anything. You trade connection for admiration, presence for performance. You measure your worth in what you do, rather than who you are. And the more you chase the impossible standard, the more distant peace becomes. But there is hope. Healing does not mean lowering your standards. Healing begins when you allow yourself to see that mistakes do not erase your value, that imperfection is not failure. You start by noticing the inner critic, not to silence it, but to question it. Who am I trying to impress? What am I truly afraid of losing? You remind yourself that trying, failing, and stumbling are all evidence that you are alive, that you care, that you are growing. You may begin slowly. Perhaps you let one small imperfection exist without correcting it. Perhaps you speak a word without overthinking it, or allow a project to remain unfinished simply for the sake of being. And in these small acts, something shifts. You realize that your worth was never dependent on perfection. You were always enough. Perfectionism promised safety, but it delivered exhaustion. True peace does not come from flawless performance. It comes from permission. Permission to feel, to err, to be messy, and ultimately to be fully human. And as you step into that permission, you discover something extraordinary. You can finally rest, and in that rest, you may begin to live. Take a moment and breathe. Notice how much you've carried, how hard you've tried to protect yourself with control and perfection. You may realize now that perfectionism has been both your shield and your burden. And perhaps for the first time, you see that you don't have to be flawless to be worthy, to be seen, to be loved. I want to ask you, what part of yourself are you holding back in the pursuit of perfection? How would it feel to let yourself be human, just for a moment? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else feel less alone in their struggle.